Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Therapy with the Counseling Couple. My name is Carlos Bing, and this is my lovely wife.
I am Seneca Bing. Welcome, everyone.
We have a jam-packed agenda for tonight. As you all know, for the past, the past couple of months here, we've been talking about and focusing on, 3 months? Yep. Couples. We've been focusing on couples, and tonight, our topic is really centered on blended families and what that looks like. So I think we can just jump on into the conversation. Mm-hmm. In the background, Salon, could you bring up the first slide? Because really what we want to do is talk a little bit about what a blended family is. But before we go there, obviously we have to define what a traditional family is. And so you see this picture here. And when you think of a traditional family is made up of a family consisting of a father and a mother who are married, raising their biological children in one household. That's what they define as a traditional family.
Or I've heard a nuclear family. But So, and so the other piece, though, is we also know that there are not a ton of families like these, but we do have some in our midst. We have a lot of families in traditional families, I would say, in our church family. And so we do want to, pay respect or be respectful of them. And definitely we're thankful to have them in our midst. But we also know that we have a lot of blended families. And so those are families who they consist of their children from other relationships. And so we know that there are many dynamics that come along with our blended families. One of the things that I was reading, so as I was preparing today, I was taking a look at Christian families, and it's talking about bringing the pieces to peace, right? The pieces of a broken heart to peace. And I really, really liked when they were talking about biological families versus invested parents, because it talks about that step family. They use the term step family. We use bonus family, right? Bonus parents. But I will read this little piece because I think it goes with what we're talking about. So it talks about a bio parent versus an invested parent. And so it says in the step family, there are two different levels of parenting: the biological parent and the invested parent. The biological parent has hopefully put in energy, time, emotion, and financial investment, which over the years has built up trust with the child. The step parent will never be the biological parent, but the step parent can become the invested parent over a period of time. You may want this to happen instantly, but it can only occur as a result of a substantial and consistent investment of time, energy, money, and emotions. And I thought that was an important part or place to start when we're talking about blended families, and we're talking about the investment that it takes to be in families, because again, as a bonus mom, I knew that things would not just come instantly. We had to work at things. I had to invest time. I had to invest, all of these other pieces. So I thought that was a good place to start as we start this conversation.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, when you think about, one of the things I joked about with Seneca as we were building this PowerPoint is that this picture in the PowerPoint, you really don't know whether this family is a traditional family or a blended family. It's really it's difficult to know sometimes whether just by looking at a family, whether they're traditional or blended. But when you think about the real definition of what a blended family is, it's like everything outside of what a traditional family is. The definition that we were able to locate was a family consisting of a couple and their children from this and all previous relationships. And so a lot of dynamics at play, and we'll get into some of that here in a moment. But one of the things we wanted to point out in Salon, if you can go to the next slide, blended families are not new. They have been around, according to the Bible, since the book of Genesis. If you read the book of Genesis in chapter 29, there's a story about Jacob and Jacob having 12 children by 4 different wives. And the story even talks about how one of those wives passes away. And so you can kind of imagine what kind of dynamics were at play, even as early as the book of Genesis. So for those that want to, kind of portray this idea that blended families are new, I think the picture at the bottom of this PowerPoint kind of shows that shocking look of this thing has been around since the beginning of time, and we've been trying to figure out how to make it work even since the book of Genesis. So this isn't anything new. In terms of our own family story, the Bing family, we have 4 children in total, 3 here on earth and 1 in heaven. Mm-hmm. And prior to our getting married, I came to the relationship with a daughter and a son. And then Seneca and I had 2 children together, a son and a daughter. And so that was, as you can see with the diagram that we tried to put together here, it sort of depicts the union that we formed and our children together, as well as Seneca termed them, the bonus children that are part of our complete family. Mm-hmm. So any thoughts there, Boo Boo?
No, we will get into a lot of thoughts around blended families, but I will say that, I absolutely love, my bonus children. And we definitely, though, have had to work through some dynamics as a result of being in our blended family. And so you'll hear some of that. We have a great couple that's on with us. They are family. And so we definitely look forward to hearing from them. But we'll get into some real dialogue. And we wanted to be transparent and open to our church family and just anyone who is watching, because we know that these relationships period, are tough. But when you have other pieces that come into your relationship, it adds different dynamics. And so we will definitely have time to kind of chat about that, talk about it, and again, be an open book and give you more information about who we are. So.
Absolutely. And as Seneca mentioned, we do have guests with us tonight that happen to be my cousin and his wife, Ron and Amber Riley. And so as you can see from their picture, they also have a blended family. And so we're going to talk a lot about their situation, our situation, and just share as an open book with you all. Again, not saying this is the way that we dealt with things or the way that you have to deal with them, but just giving you an idea of how we navigate the situations that we were dealing with through a whole lot of prayer, a whole lot of communication, and just making the situation work the best we can. So if we can bring up Amber and Ron and have them talk a little bit about their situation, that would be awesome.
Hey, everybody. Hey, y'all.
So Ron and Amber, tell us a little bit about your family. I'm sorry.
So when we were married, well, first I want to say that there are so many different types of blended families. So you guys, I believe that was your first marriage. And then of course, Carlos had children and brought them into you guys' marriage. We both were married before. We had 4 children apiece from our previous marriage, and we have 1 son together. So we have a pretty big blend.
Yes, big blend.
Big blend.
Yeah. One of the main challenges of that, and it kind of goes with some of the questions, is how do you kind of blend those relationships in to not force the compatibility, but to blend it in. There has to be some way to create a structure that's not there, so everyone in that family in the family can be successful. And that was one of the things that we try to do when we first decided to get married. But also the key was to make sure that the husband and the wife were on the same page. And we knew that the only main voices that we needed to hear in the house when it came to making decisions was first God, then me as the king of the house, and then as she followed. Without those structures, everything else you can forget about it, because one of the other challenges is when you have those outside influences, it challenges the motherhood and the fatherhood, because there's relationships that are being created, and being a bonus stepdad, sometimes the other children may have felt that I was trying to replace their father, but that wasn't the
Hmm.
case. It was more so of, since I'm the bonus dad, there's a life that I live that's separate from the life that you've been exposed to where, in the Raleigh family, it's, I'm not, it's like hard knock life, but there's also success. We know how to, turn a sugar sandwich or, bologna sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And we know how to, mix, cereal and water together so there's a lifestyle that we can bring, that if you're not accustomed to, that someday down the line, if you're going to college and you ain't got no money, but you got some cereal, I could pour that water. You know what I'm saying? It might be disgusting, but somebody's gonna get fed. So yeah, that's one of the challenges. But there's a joy of being a blended family, but it's not an easy road, and that's in creating Blend Magazine, we wanted to make sure that we equip people with the resources that they need to know. Okay, these are some of the red flags to look at even before you start a marriage. But then as you pursue the marriage, and then you get married, and if there's other characters that come in, you got to know how to deal with the script, and so.
So you mentioned Bland Magazine, and that's why we are so happy to have you on here, because we want you to talk a little bit about that. So what is Bland?
BLAM is an acronym for Blended Love and Marriage. As we've all talked about, that, bringing a blended family together, it's challenging at the least. I kept finding myself having questions about things, wondering if I was right about things, some of the things I was thinking about, was I being petty? And some of those situations come up, and, it's hard to find a resource or someone who knows exactly what you're going through. And I went back to school. Love and relationships has always been a passion of mine anyway. And so I'm currently finishing up my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. But in doing that and trying to write papers and finding research and resources for, explaining some of the things that I'm trying to explain in papers, there's also a lack of literature as far as helping out a blended family. A lot of things were only geared towards traditional or nuclear families. So I also have a degree in creative writing. So I talked to my husband one day. I called Seneca one day and was like, "Hey, let's be a resource for people." And so that's what we did. We have 3 issues out now,
Yeah. Yes,
working on the
you do.
fourth.
That's awesome. And
Hmm.
it is a great resource, and it has a lot of information for blended families. And again, we don't always find, like you said, a lot of resources, and not a lot of resources from people of color. And so
Hmm.
we definitely are happy to have that as a resource.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. And there's so much that can be gained from blended family blended families in general. And Ron, I know you said this jokingly, but I was thinking about when you shared the whole scenario of the cereal and the water, and thinking about like that grind that has to happen when you go away. And if you don't have that skill set from your traditional family, you go into the nuclear or the blended family, and you have the opportunity to get those
Mhm.
type of learning, that type of experience. It can be very helpful if the
Right.
children feel comfortable enough to have the conversation and those
Mhm.
things. Part of what we're going to go into next, and I'm losing my voice here. Um, there's actually a video that we want to play that sort of talks a little bit about blended families. And so I'll ask Salon to play the video, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about the content and some of our thoughts around the video. But it's just a video that talks about blending and starting with the right expectations. So, Salon, if you wouldn't mind playing the video.
In this video, we're going to talk about how important expectations are in having a successful blended family. So there is no perfect formula. Unfortunately, I'm not offering that to you, but the right expectations can help you establish the right foundation. Now, I'm speaking to couples that have not yet gotten married but are preparing, and you're bringing kids into the marriage, into the family. Or I'm talking to the people that are already married and you're realizing you're having some struggles. Either way, this series can be helpful to you. So we're going to talk about expectations today. And the first expectation that you need to have, and again, those of you that are already experiencing the blended family, you're going to know this. Blending families is challenging. It should be no surprise that taking two separate things and making it into one is going to have its challenges, right? Each family has its own traditions, its own way of doing things, its own set of rules, its own set of values. And all of a sudden, you've got these contrasting ideas coming together, and there's going to be some clashes. There's going to be some negotiating and compromising that's going to have to happen. So the first thing you need to know for you as the couple, and even to prepare kids, if they're old enough to understand this, is that it's going to have its challenges. Here's the second expectation you need to have. You need to view this process of bringing your families together more like a crock pot than a blender. You know, I've done some research, I've read some books, I've listened to some different people on this topic, and I think this is a very valuable point that'll help you have the right expectations if you think about your families coming together more like a crock pot. Here's what that means. Picture what a blender's like. You get everything thrown in there, and then you spin it, and it chews it up, and it mashes it all up, and it becomes like this goopy mess, right? Now, if you're trying to make a shake or something, that's fantastic. But a blender's pretty violent, and it gets pretty mushy, and the end result looks nothing like what it looked like when it went in. Now, contrast that with a crock pot. When you put in a crock pot, you have each thing that goes in there, and it cooks over time, slow, and each element brings its own taste and contribution to the finished product. And that's how we need to look at families. Instead of thinking, when we say the word blended, it kind of gives us this idea that, well, we have to force everybody together, and we have to blend it up and mash it up and find this totally different result. But in the end, I think it would be better for you to have the expectation and think, we're more like a crock pot. It's going to take some time. It's going to be over a slow heat, over many hours, and we're all putting our own selves into the mix, and the end result will still, you'll be able to still see that a carrot that went in before it was cooked is a carrot when it comes out. The meat that you put in is still the meat when it comes out. It's not a mushed up mess. So I think that's a good expectation for you to have as you prepare for blending your family, or if you're already in the situation, to maybe back up and slow down and say, you know, we've kind of tried to force us all together more like a blender, and I think the crock pot idea might be a better strategy for us. And here's the last expectation. Be ready to negotiate and adjust. Here's the thing. If you're coming into this experience with older kids that understand exactly what's happening and they've got their struggles and their concerns, this is a good expectation to talk about with them. We're all going to have to make adjustments. We're all going to have to compromise. And if you're preparing for that, it'd be good to have a family meeting and talk about that even before you get married. And even if you're already married and you're already trying to blend your families and you're struggling through it, this is still a good expectation to come back to and to say, you know what? We all have to have the attitude that we're all going to have to give, and we're going to get some take also, but we're all going to have to compromise. None of us are going to have it exactly the way we want it. Again, I think that's an important expectation to have, blending your families, that you all collectively have to come to the table and say, I'm going to have to give on some things, but I'm going to get on other things. And that's a good thing. And again, the end result being, the whole attitude, the whole heart of this process needs to be, we're not trying to take you and what you value and who you are and make you somebody else. You're not going to be lost in the mix. You're going to have your role in this family, and your opinions are going to be heard. And sometimes your way is going to be the way that we go, and other times it's not. But if we all work together and recognize that we all have a part to play in this new family that we're creating, then we don't have to have so much of this tension of fighting and staking our claim and saying, I will not give in on any of this stuff. So again, I know that me giving you 3 ideas is certainly not going to simplify everything and make it all go really smoothly, but at least this will help you to establish a foundation of talking about what should our expectations be, whether because we're preparing to blend families or we're already in it and we're realizing it's not working as well as we want it to. Let's start over. Let's start with the right expectations so we can get the right foundation in place.
Okay. That video right there. So many points. I know Seneca was over here writing stuff down and I'm over here typing stuff. And I've seen the video probably 5 times by now. But so many different themes that were shared. I think, and I won't steal the crock pot one because I know you got one on that one. I think that the one comment that I'll share before we pass it over to the Rileys and then bring it back over to us is it's a lot of compromise when you talk about blending a family. Yeah. I mean, the reality is I grew up in a traditional family and there was a whole lot of compromise there. But, you know, having a blended family and having what I'm going to call outside parents, the parents that are the other parents of the children that don't live in your home, sometimes that compromise piece, because at the end of the day, this is our home, but they have their feelings. And so trying to balance all those different things out can be very, very challenging. And there's a whole lot of compromise that has to happen. And then when you think about the kids and their feelings, and one thing that she said was making sure that no one feels like they're going to be lost in the mix. Because, right, like, no one's going to get everything they want, but that's even in a traditional family. But making sure that everyone feels valued and can contribute is so incredibly important.
And I would say, you know, to your point about compromise, it's a huge compromise on all sides. But what I had to realize as a stepmother, I had to look in the mirror also, because I wanted to feel like I was right all the time. And the way that I felt was the way that everyone was supposed to feel. But I had to realize that, one, we have children that are in this mix, and they are important, and their feelings are important, and they need to be valued. And number 2, I can't take everything personally, because when you do have people that are outside of your house and they make decisions, they may be making a decision that, one, is good for their house and that's good for the child that they have. But when you blend, you have to think about all of the other children and the other households. So there have been a lot of compromise we've had to have and that I've had to do. But again, I will say it again, I had to take a real strong look in the mirror at who I was, how I wanted to show up in this family, and be able to understand how what I did or how I felt would impact other people. So I have some other things, but I'll be quiet and
yeah, because the Rileys in. You know, they might have some thoughts. Riley family, what do y'all think about the video?
I'll say this first before, because she has some very interesting statistics, but, you know, we totally agree with what you are saying. I think the interesting part about, you know, the compromising is understanding there's a boundary of how much to compromise. And what I mean by that is, you know, when you have teens, or they're on the verge of being teens and they're right now they're like getting to high school. And then they're at that development stage where they're not only developing and becoming who they are as a person and individual, but there's still also tools and instruments that can still be used if the outside household still thinks there's a chance or a door open that there's a relationship that will get back. And that's some of the things that we kind of went through. So it was important for us when it came to compromising is the first to understand that, okay, before anything, this part has to be on one accord. If we're not on one accord, we can easily be manipulated by the cries. There were so many cries that we were hearing. There were so many attitudes and behavior things that we had to check. Sometimes it did get the best of us to where we were angry with each other. But then when we we have this rule: we never go to bed angry. No one wants to. I don't have time to be rolling over in the bed. Can't stay up till like 5 o'clock in the morning, knowing I got to get up in an hour. Like I don't have time for that. So it's like we have a thing where we never go to bed angry. So that means we have to deal with it when a situation happens. But talk about the statistic, because I think a lot what she was saying, I kind of feel like it was more towards compromising with the children, but I wanted to make sure that there's an understanding of the marriage. And like, let's say if a child doesn't like the husband or the new mom, uh, those can be issues that can lead to another divorce. Talk about that.
So in the video, she talked about, how challenging it is to bring two worlds together. But to me, bringing two worlds together, that's the traditional family. The blended family, we can be bringing 3, 4, 5 worlds together, depending on who,
We
who we
brought
got.
3, 4, 5. It's like,
Depending on who you're getting married to. So for our household alone, if we can talk about just even being in the pandemic and talk about quarantining, our house affects 3 houses. We have our house, and then my biological children from my previous marriage, there's that house, and then his biological children from his previous marriage, there's that house. And so we made sure that we took care of everybody. And blended families, this is like one of the stresses of a blended family. We're the only type of family who has to consider, or if we're mature and we're good, we're good blended parents and a mature married couple, we have to consider everyone else because we are extensions of these other places. And I was reading, I was doing research for one of the magazine articles, and someone had asked the question, can kids break up a marriage? So, so it's a common fact that, the divorce rate for marriage is around 50%. It's really kind of like, I guess, between 40 to 50%. What people don't know, or what's not readily made available, is subsequent marriages, the divorce rate increases. So second marriages are around 60%. When you add children to the equation from previous relationships, the divorce rate is around 70 to 73%. And so that's like, wow, like our type of family is not expected to succeed at all. And I mean, after living through, and going through different, experiences, we can see where that can happen. So yeah, we have to make sure that we were always straight, that we were always on the same page. Because you also have to think that a blended family coming together, the reason why we're coming together is because, it's the result of somebody getting hurt somewhere down along the line. These children have also have already seen a breakup.
Mm.
And now we're in a relationship where the statistics say that we're not bound for success. And all of these things have a negative effect on our children, which trickles down to community. Which is another thing that Blend Magazine, we specialize in blended families, but it's also, a resource for just marriages in general, because, strong marriages, strong homes, produce strong children, which is better for schools, which is better for the community in the long run. I mean, I really think that like we have answered one of the answers to, if not the main answer to, like all of the increase in the violence in the our community in Columbus, in the country. So that was my take on it.
Yeah. Well,
Great take.
okay, we have these questions that are in this here crock pot. keeping with the theme. However, you brought up COVID, and those are things that people don't think about in the dynamics, because we had to think about our son was going to his mom's house, right? And so he was there. We don't know who's there. We don't know if they're vaccinated. We don't know if they're, and then are they blended? Yes. And so there are other children. And so again, these are things that people don't always think about, but we always have to be conscious of what's happening. And we never want to tell him, no, you can't come over here, right? Because this is home. And so we really had to just be thoughtful around that. And one of the things I will always say is our boys made all of the adults get along, right? They made the adults be adults because they are so close. And so we had to learn how to navigate that blended space because they were going to be close. Now we're fortunate with one of our, with my son's mom, we get along, we're able to, talk to one another, we're able to negotiate and make things work. And so even to the point when the boys were small, my son saw that his brother had two moms. So he said, well, I can just call brother's mom. And we're like, well, no, it doesn't work that way. We have to, we can't do that. Right. But that's the innocence of children, right? And they saw that we got along. So we're like, well, we call everybody mom. So, again, some things are taught as children grow and, things happen. But when we talked, you also talked about, or the video did, negotiation and adjustment and being able to pivot, right, when we need to pivot and have conversation. And so I want to bring this book back in real quick because listening is also a key thing in blended families. And it says, most communication collisions, right, come from not listening. Most of us don't know how to put ourselves aside and really listen to what other people are saying. And there were a couple of scriptures that went along with that. So one is Philippians 2:4. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. So that's one scripture. And then the other one is James 1:19 and 20. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. For man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. And when you are in blended families, those two scriptures are definitely ones that you will have to live by, because it could be that you are quick to anger because your feelings get involved, but you really have to listen to what other people are saying and to the whole situation so that, you can make the best decision for the kids. All right. So we're going to get to this here crock pot. Okay.
You brought this crock. Yeah, tell them about the crock pot, which that kind of led into the video a little bit.
It did. Well, It came from the video. Okay. But we have our little question here in this crock pot. And we're just going to pull a question and we'll, ask the Rileys to answer first. And then we will, piggyback off of your questions.
So the first question. Children who belong to blended families live in homes with different sets of rules. Oh, this is a great question. How do you deal with the children in this situation and the outside parent's perspective on rules in your house?
Woo!
Yeah, it's tough. Let me ask you.
I can go
ahead.
first on this one. So one of the difficulties is yes, different households have different rules. One of the things that we noticed in our home is the different boundaries and how they change from house to house, which caused rules to be a problem. For instance, in my biological kids in their other home, my daughters kind of filled the space of mother. There's one younger son there. And so it was harder to transition from kind of being in maybe kind of a parent position, and then coming here and being in a child position because we're always home. Both of us are always here. And so with that, it kind of caused, a little bit of friction here and there, just being able to switch back and forth with those boundaries. And then I would say sibling placement as well, because Dorian, my biological son, who is the baby at his other home, has three little ones under him here. And so that plays into, okay, I think we were talking about earlier today, the boys aren't allowed to play games like during the week, during, the school week. And so it's like, well, I'm allowed to play. Well, not this week. There's no games during school time. We wait till the weekend if you've had a good week. And so just
No, that's it. Yeah.
something like that.
Well, I will say one example for us is so Carlos, the COVID-19 has made him, he does not want to go outside. Okay. For him to come to church, everyone, that is a great thing because he does not go anywhere. And so our oldest son is a social butterfly. And so when he's here with us, he wants to be over people's house and he wants to do things. And he's like, no, it's like a hard no, right? And, we have to negotiate that sometimes because I'm like, he is in 12th grade. I mean, he has to live. But at his mother's house, he can do a little more. And so, he's a good sport about it. But I know that sometimes he's like, I just cannot do anything when I'm over there because of the rules that are here. So.
Yeah, I mean, it is challenging, but it's also forced us, particularly me, because I am COVID paranoid, to really think introspectively of, okay, maybe I need to relax a little bit. So it forces Seneca and I to have some conversations about, this is what I thought should work. He can't do nothing. And she's like, well, no, he's a senior. He should be able to do a few things. Let's loosen up a little bit. And so she's able to help me with that. Which I think he appreciates, but he also knows when he goes to his mom's house, it's a different set of rules. He's at the point now, because he's 17, that he respects both sets of rules. And then the way I handle things, I'm pretty laid back, but if it gets too far gone, he knows it can go south really quickly. And so he doesn't want it to go there. And so he stays within those boundaries because he knows he doesn't want to see dad turn into that one. Which can possibly happen if he goes outside of that. So we're able to negotiate that, do some flexibility, do some negotiating. So that does help out.
Yes. So we're probably gonna get about 2 of these questions. Okay. So the next one is, how do you ensure that each child in the blended family feels like they have what they need to be a part of the family?
I think one of the things that we did when we first got married is that we focused all of the teaching surrounding purpose into how to, at an early age, identify what your purpose is. We understand that through the Bible, it teaches that the woman is an incubator. It shows that you give a woman a seed, she produces. But that's the same principle is applied to everyone. We all have seeds that need to be produced, but it's all about, creating an atmosphere, creating the best soil possible, watering it, nurturing it as much as possible, so it can flourish. So one of the things with our household, it was goal driven. A lot of people may not know, in a typical Raleigh family, it was, you're only supposed to make it so far in life. But due to personal struggles, I made it a commitment to myself that my seeds have to be they have to excel, they have to be greater. And that was something that I adapted at a young age. So when it comes to the teaching, we look at the individuals and we say, let's identify what your purpose is at an early stage. And then you get this kind of one-on-one coach with me. It helps them understand that, yeah, this is the guy that my mother married, and he's not only nurturing us, but he's nurturing her as well, developing her as well. So that is a way that we kind of make sure the individuals feel like they have that space to where they can actually flourish. And as long as they abide by these rules, they'll have great success. It's almost like, we hit a point with our daughters that we had to have the birds and the bees conversation, which was crazy. But you understand that, they were eating that part of high school, and it was just like, okay, I don't want you to make those mistakes that I made, because you have a life, and according to your goals, premarital sex is not a part of something that you can do. You don't really want to entertain this at this part, because this is the end goal. So, being goal oriented and then allowing them to experiment on different things that they want to do. We've had everything in the house, from a dance group to a mime team to a basketball players to football players.
Let them use the cameras.
Let them use the cameras. They have, it's a wide spectrum. So
They even try to talk show.
They even try a talk show. So I just think identifying the purpose is the key.
Yeah.
Love that. I love that.
And I think really nurturing what, like you said, identifying purpose and then nurturing them, and being consistent, right? Being consistent in who you are and what you stand for and your values, because, there was a point in time where TT and I, we had, she was probably 18 or 19, and who I am is who I am. And I have worked with other people's children. And I said, I'm never going to give other people's children what I'm not going to give my own. But sometimes when it's your own, they may not want it as much, right? Or they may not understand why you're asking specific questions or trying to figure out how they want to navigate as a young adult. And so we went through a real rough time at one point. And I'm happy to say we have gone through that. We have talked about it. We know where both of us found fault in that space. And I thank God that we were able to get beyond that point. And so even if, there are people watching and you may be going through a rough patch with, your child or your blended child at the time, I honestly feel like that consistency and just being there, even when she felt like she didn't want me there, was it was a pivotal point in moment in our relationship. And so, yeah.
No, and what really hits me about that, I know y'all's relationship got a lot better in time, but what really, really let me know that the relationship got better is the fact that TT, her career path is based on what she watched Seneca do when TT was little. And so, what T does now is exactly what Seneca did 10, 15 years ago. It's the same job, but it's because she watched Seneca's passion. And even though they might have beefed back then on certain things, TT also watched her and was able to pick up skills and said, you know what? I like that. I want to do that. And so they're able to have conversations about that thing back and forth. And I just sit back and watch and smile. Like it's just amazing. They get along really, really good now.
Yeah. And then the other piece with our son, one thing when they were little, because the boys were pretty close in age, but I made it a point that if someone was going to come over and they were going to bring Carlos something, you needed to bring Jalen something or don't bring anything. But what I was not going to do is have one child feel like, well, why did he get that? And why didn't I get that? And why wasn't I? And so, again, just really being conscious of how we were parenting, with them being close in age, not allowing that to happen. I also feel like has really helped in our space. And they're good boys. They're very respectful, and I love them to death.
They do try.
They get on his nerves. My level. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
We're going to pull one more.
One more. Okay. So, oh boy.
That's the time. Boy.
Share a time when the outside parent attempted to influence or dictate what happened in your home. And then how did you handle that situation?
Y'all's a real big over there, cousin.
Man, like there's stuff that happened, but I don't know if it's a guy thing. Like I just forget, but I think she remembers. I'm like,
I told him he has he blocks out things he doesn't like to remember. But I know. Well, you remember. I mean, so at some point, at the beginning of our relationship, when I think we took turns having kids getting dropped off at the house.
yeah.
So what would happen is we would only have when we first started, we only got it was like one full weekend to ourselves. And it seemed like that weekend would seem to get sabotaged.
Yeah.
Some kind of way. There may have been like an argument or a disagreement between kids and the other parent. So their mom would just kind of drop them off. That kind of happened up until we moved. And then the last time is when I think we finally got it together. Our son and his mother, they had a disagreement about something. And so we're sitting on the couch. It's our free weekend. We're sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden there's a phone call. The doorbell is ringing, and there's a kid outside getting dropped off. And we're like, no, not this time. Like, you sit right there in the driveway. He's going to have a quick conversation. But, I think it was understood that day that, you're going to have to learn how to rectify these situations, not just come and just drop on our doorstep, because it's not fair to us. You don't know if we had plans, even if we were just going to sit and just watch TV all weekend. It was our weekend to do that. And there wasn't any, fly words said, no arguments or anything. I think it was understood. It was like, no, don't leave. Just give us a few minutes. We have a few words with him, and he's coming back out to get in the car. That was that. It hasn't happened again.
Hey, there's a funny one too that she said yesterday. That she said at one time their mother said,
this was way at the beginning.
Don't be intimate during. She said another word, but don't be intimate.
Don't be intimate when my kids are at your house.
Like, you can't just throw that. Like, come on, man. Wait. Who says that?
But these are real conversations. Yeah. These are real things that happen. These are real situations. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, they are.
I don't remember the outside parents going to that length. That's wild, cousin. That's interesting. I do remember. So with our oldest, TT, she's always been super respectful. Like, she still says yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, even to this day. Like, she's 26, right? Like, she just it's in her brain, and that's how she responds. And there was a point when TT was coming over here, probably when she was about 15, when she stopped saying yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am to Seneca. And we just kind of noticed it one day. And Seneca came to me and said, hey, did you tell TT not to say yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am anymore? And I said, no. And I said, well, you know what? You're right. She stopped saying it. So we had a conversation with her and found out that it wasn't because of something that we said, but in fact, it was because of the other house that told her, don't say that to Seneca anymore. And we had to explain it to you at that young age, like, y'all do what you gonna do over there. But in this house, these are the rules over here. This is the expectation here. Now, I also had to have a nice conversation with her mom where it was this whole denial piece and all that. But I had to let it be known that these are the rules over here. I'm not going to control what happens over there. You're not going to control what happens over here. I think that the most important thing in all that was because emotions get involved. And even as I'm thinking about it now, I'm getting frustrated thinking about it. Going back to those days, and that was like a long time ago. But the main thing is being able to control those emotions, because as soon as you start going a direction that gets those emotions involved, the two parties are no longer hearing the conversation. They only see your emotion, and you're not able to get to a place where you can try to solve the issue that's in front of you. So if I can give anybody a tip, recommendation, advice, whatever, try your best to manage those emotions. Even when you feel like you're being done wrong, which, you may be being done wrong, but you want to be able to focus on, what am I trying to get? And what I was trying to get was a situation where my daughter could come over to the home, that we could be a family here, and that we all respected and loved each other. And if I went off and, yelled at her mom or cussed her mom out or whatever, that wouldn't have got me where I needed to be with our household. And so I had to really manage those emotions. And it wasn't easy. It was tough. Luckily, I'm typically a calm person, so that helped out.
Yes, he's typically really always a calm person. However, that has come with growth with the other situations. We had to have conversations, though, real conversations. I will definitely say, really being honest with growth, right? I had to say to him, now listen, you cannot be going off like that, because it's not going to get you what you need from that situation. We got to tell the truth and shame the devil now. We have all been in situations where we get real frustrated about things.
Yes, Lord.
And, when at the point where I see him not be the person that he always is, I needed to we had to have a conversation. We had to pray. We had to do everything, because he could not step outside the character that I knew he was in that frustration. Because again, the ultimate goal was so that our daughter could be here, we could be a family, and we could do what we needed to do. So again, we are not telling people that it's easy to manage your emotions in these situations. We are not telling people that you're just going to calmly tell the other person that you want something, but we are saying that it is so important, for the sake of your children and for your family, for you to be able to understand that you can't control other people. You can only control you, and to really start to work on that piece. So with that, we did get through 3 questions, y'all.
We did. Yeah. I think that, it's most important before we end this great conversation is to really ask you all, is there one last tip that you would want to share with the people? Then we'll give a tip, do our thank yous, but any last tip that you want to give the viewers out there that are dealing with the blended family and trying to navigate this turf?
I would just say, man, trust God always. Trust God, get into his word, because there are many different examples of, like you said, blended families in the Bible, even including Abraham and Sarah and Hagar. So there's different things that you can study, and also make sure you have like a therapist. Make sure you're doing the research. Make sure you're talking about different situations and keeping the forefront of the marriage there, because as long as you keep the marriage as a focus as well, and don't just all think about compromising for the kids' sake, you'll succeed. And I think God is looking to use the marriage, the original union that he created, to change the world. And if the head of the house is not in place, if he's out of the atmosphere that God created, then the rest is gone. So just keep the foundation built on God, and you'll succeed.
And I would just say to make sure that you're talking to each other. That's one thing that we're able to do. We talk about everything, and our like motto or our thing is that as long as we're good, everything else will work out. And I think that goes for blended as well as any traditional marriage as well. And another thing is as his wife. And I think, Seneca, you kind of hit on this in saying when you notice Carlos coming out of his character. Ron had posted something about me. It was years back, and he says things and they stick with me. And he said, at the end of the day, she always makes my day peaceful. And so that it hit me like down in my belly. And so and so that's always what I try to I do. It's my home. There's peace in my home. He's at peace, and anything that try to come against that peace, it may not be peaceful.
Mhm. That's real.
That's the truth.
Mhm.
That's the truth. And I would just say, to listen to each other. I know that communication is one of those major pieces. So you already said having God as the foundation. That is 1st. But listening and really communicating is also really important.
Yep. And I'll close by saying that with all that, right? God is the foundation, listening to one another, and then just making sure that you don't allow the kids. I think Ron and Amber, y'all spoke this, and we talked about it a little bit too. Not letting the children get in between, because if the husband and wife, if that core is tight, you said everything else will work out. They're either going to be mad about you telling them no, but they're going to see that y'all love each other, and that's how they're going to learn to love someone else in the future.
Right.
If they see y'all beefing, they're going to think that's normal. Obviously, parents have challenges at times, but if they see that all the time, they're going to think that's normal, and that's how they're going to behave. You mentioned it earlier. We're raising children. We're raising the next generation to build safe communities, better schools. It all comes together. Being a parent is one of it's probably the most difficult job out there that I can think of. I can't think of nothing tougher. Because we're literally developing the next set of humans. So we have a huge responsibility. And so as long as we're tight, the kids will follow suit. So I think I just shook the table. Is that why you tapped my leg? Okay, I'm sorry. So we are. I keep shaking the table. Yeah. So we are done for tonight. This went really quickly, as they always do. But Ron and Amber, we really appreciate you two joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I convinced Seneca that we only needed one couple to do this, because I think we had plenty of stories that we wanted to share. Like, we may have to do this again, because this is a topic that can go far-reaching. So we'll keep you posted on that. But we love y'all. We thank y'all for being a part of this conversation tonight. Anything you should have?
Well, yes, again, we want to thank you. We talk quite frequently, so I'm glad that we were able to share with the viewers this evening. We also want to thank Dr. and Dr. Wise for always making mental health a priority, because we know that our mental health is very important.
Yes.
We want to thank Reverend Salam Wise, who's in the background, for making sure that things are happening. So thank you so much. And we want to thank all of you for just being here and sharing. And that's all.
That's all. We'll be back in December for the next one.
Oh, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Is month. So, make sure, men, you're taking care of your mental health. That's right. And we will see you in December after Thanksgiving. So we'll see you next month.